Hello and welcome to Immigration USA with Kathia. Today we're going to talk about different news that have happened during this week. So stay put because you are going to learn a lot of new things about immigration law in the United States. So let's start. Well, during this week, probably the most important news was that the government offered $1,000 to all of those who decide to self-deport. What do I mean by self-deport? Well, self-deport is when you decide to leave the United States on your own, knowing that at the moment that you leave, you're acquiring a 10-year penalty. Yes, that's why we call it self-deportation, because you are going to acquire a penalty. And that penalty, it's a 10-year ban from coming back. So the government says, if you register and you announce your decision to leave the United States, we, after you have left the United States, we're going to pay you $1,000 as stipend, and we may also pay for your travel ticket. Now, the government is saying we may. The government is not saying we definitely are going to do that. So I'm just warning you, it's not concrete. That's what they are offering. Now, has anybody ever seen this money from the government? Not yet. So it's just an offer from the government. Why is this offering happening? Well, most likely because the registration numbers are not what they expected. They expected that people were going to self-deport in thousands or tens of thousands, and that is not happening. And why is people not leaving the United States on their own? Because they can't. Most people cannot return to their countries because they don't have anything to return to. So they are here, and as long as they have a job here, they are honestly working, then they're making a living to support their families. So the government is saying, we're going to pay you $1,000 to leave, self-deport, and we will even pay your airline ticket. And the government is also saying, if you do this, then you're not going to have problems coming back. That's not true. Do not believe that part. Because I started today saying, if you leave, you are going to have a 10-year penalty. And the government cannot stop this 10-year penalty from occurring. You definitely going to have a 10-year penalty. So beware, be cautious. If you leave knowing that for at least 10 years, you won't be able to come back. If you are willing to do that, then by all means, try this new offer of the government. How do you access it? Well, you go to dhs.gov/CBP home. And that's how you notify them of your intention of leaving the United States. And then you follow the process to obtain this money. Hopefully, you will receive it. Now, let's go to news number 2. News number 2 is that the courts in the United States, the federal courts, are stopping the government every day from the government trying to do whatever they want against immigrants. And why are the federal government judges doing this? Well, mainly because immigrants do have some constitutional rights. And the federal judges are seeing that the government is trying to abuse their power and deport people without providing them the benefit of defending themselves. And that is a constitutional right. So the judges are saying, no, you can't do that. So, for example, let me give you a few examples that have been on the news this week. There was this legal permanent resident who had been detained and threatened to deport because he had spoke openly against the war on Israel and Palestine, and he was on the Palestinian side. So the government detained him and said, we are going to cancel your green card and we're going to deport you. And the judges said, no way, you can't do that. This person lives in the United States and it's a legal permanent resident and he has constitutional rights. And the right of free speech is a constitutional right, and you cannot take it away without allowing this person the opportunity to defend himself. So he's free right now. His lawsuits are still going, but at least he's not detained because the judges say this doesn't seem right. Then we have another case where a doctoral candidate, a student from Tufts University, who is in the PhD program, was also detained. She's from Turkey, and she was detained for expressing her opinions against the war on Palestine and Israel. And she has been detained until today. Today, a federal judge decided that she needed to be released, and she will be able to continue her immigration court case from her home, and that she will continue to do her life normally until an immigration judge decides what to do. So all of these was done by the government with the excuse that whoever talks against the war in Israel, it's a terrorist because he's pro-Hamas. But that's not the case. You don't become a terrorist just because you express your opinion. So the government so far has lost in these two cases. Now, one of the most important cases that we have so far is one where a federal judge has decided that the Alien Enemies Act that the government invoked in order to detain people and deport them to different countries and to cancel visas and everything, it's not constitutional. So if the use of the Alien Enemies Act, it's not constitutional, then maybe everything that the government has done so far is not constitutional. Let me explain. So we have a law that's called the Aliens Enemy Act. And it's a law that is very valid, that it's been in the books since 1798. And that says that the United States, in times of emergency, when they are defending against another government who is trying to attack the United States, may do emergency things to protect the United States from alien enemies. Okay, that's what the law says. Well, then the government, the Trump government, decided that terrorists were alien enemies and therefore they needed to be deported. They specifically decided that the Tren de Aragua was a terrorist organization and that members of the Tren de Aragua could be deported without due process. Due process means opportunity to defend yourself, because these were times of war against these enemies. Well, what the judge said, the judge who has made this decision he said the Tren de Aragua could be terrorist, but they are not another government against the United States. And therefore, we cannot invoke the Alien Enemies Act on them, because you can only invoke the Alien Enemies Act when another government is trying to attack the United States. And Tren de Aragua, it's a criminal organization, and it's not another government. What about that? Well, if that's the case, then no Venezuelan can be deported to any other country that is not Venezuela, because that person, it's also entitled to due process, to the opportunity to defend himself against the deportation. So those three decisions have been very important this week, and they are a little sample of how federal judges are not willing to give up to the pressure of the government, but instead are willing to stick with the Constitution. So we need to keep watching all these cases and see what happens next week on the immigration arena. Let's go to news number 3. Well, news number 3 has been that the government has decided today to file with the Supreme Court a motion to review the decision of the federal judges to put a pause to the cancellation of parole for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. What does this mean? Well, the government wants to cancel parole for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. However, the way in which they've done the cancellation, it's inappropriate. And the courts have said, well, we decide if the cancellation is correct or not. We can't enforce this cancellation. And the government says, no, we, as the president, has the right to give the parole and take away the parole whenever he feels like. And so now we need to sit and wait if the Supreme Court is going to review this case and is going to decide whether the government can or cannot cancel the parole for Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Right now, no decision has been made. So if you have parole from one of these countries, please know that your employment authorization is still valid, but you really need to find out an alternative way to remain in the United States, an alternative type of visa. And if there is nothing, well, then maybe look into another country to see if you can move to another country where you can live freely and legally. Because staying undocumented here, it's really not worth it. Okay, let's talk about our next news. And the next news comes from ICE and the many operatives they are doing to remove people. One of the most serious during this week is the raids that ICE is doing at different types of businesses. Yes, they are no longer going to the houses. Well, they are going, but not as much. They are still going to the houses of people looking for people who have removal orders or criminal records. But now they are also going to different types of businesses where they think that employers may have hired undocumented individuals. So during this week, we've seen several news of ICE going to restaurants and construction sites and gardening places where people are working in the yards or in agriculture. And why are they doing this? Well, it's twofold. One, because they know that at these places they may find undocumented individuals and they will add up to the numbers of people they're detaining. But also because if they can accuse an employer of knowing that they are hiring undocumented individuals, then this employer may end up paying big fines and even end up serving jail time for hiring a person that they know is undocumented. So it's a good time to remind all the employers that you are not immigration. You cannot 100% know if a person is or not allowed to work in the United States. But your job is to follow the government guidelines and always hire someone that you know, that you think has legal papers to work in the United States. If at any moment you suspect or you know that the person is undocumented, you can no longer hire that person. You need to let them go. The government is doing I-9 silenced audits, and that it's a fact. And when these silent audits happened, then normally the government investigates to know if the employer knows that their employees are undocumented or not. And if they know, then that employer is going to end up paying very high fines and may end up having criminal charges. So beware of that. Be mindful. And if you are working in a place and ICE shows up at your place of employment, please do not run. Because if you do, you are going to give ICE a reason to go after you, and then not only accuse you of being undocumented, but also file charges for putting the life of the officer in danger, for obstructing a police officer, and you don't want any of that. So be careful. Always remember your rights in case you encounter ICE. And remember that we have 3 big yes and 3 big no. Yes, I want to give my name. Yes, I want to ask for the opportunity to make a phone call and talk to my lawyer. And 3, you say yes to, I want to see a judge. You always want to see an immigration judge. Now, there are 3 no's. You cannot lie at any moment, in any way, shape, or form. You always have to remain honest, and always say your name. Do not lie. Okay. You do not want to sign voluntary departure. Voluntary departure is a technical term for an opportunity that the government gives you to depart on your own will, without seeing a judge, to avoid being detained for any longer time. However, you don't want to do this. Because if you do, you are renouncing your opportunity to see an immigration judge and maybe stay in the United States. So you never want to do voluntary departure. And you never want to sign anything. Do not sign. Do not sign any document, because if you do, you may be signing this voluntary departure that I was talking about, and you don't want to do that. So always remember 3 yes, 3 no, and remain calm. Because if you don't have a prior deportation order, if you don't have a criminal record, most likely you're going to be bailed out or released on your own to be able to attend your immigration court proceedings in immigration court on your own. Only when you have criminal record, you may end up in mandatory detention, waiting to see the judge from your cell. And if you have a prior removal order, then you will not be allowed to be released in bond. You will be deported and you will not be able to see a judge again, because someone who has already received an order of deportation cannot see a judge again. So this is the situation. I hope that this was interesting to you and that you learn something new every day. I will be back with you next week to give you more information about the immigration news in the United States. Stay tuned and see you soon.